didn't really have this training or practicing, if you like, and that patterning that we kind of like got off our parents, it seeps into how we love, right? And also how we escape. So if you want to live a self-led life, if you want your alcohol-free journey to feel like freedom, not punishment, then you've got to address the way you relate, because the way you relate to one person is the way you relate to everyone.
Eeny weeny, itsy beeny, weeny deeny, yellow polka dot bikini, or something like that. You want to be alcohol free as fuck, but you also want it to be easy, joyful, liberating. But every time you walk into the same room as your other half, you feel tight, you feel numb, you feel unseen. There is anger seething beneath the surface like a volcano ready to erupt, and suddenly the voice returns, I deserve a fucking drink. Let's talk about why almost every striver I've ever worked with, whether they know it or not, has a relationship wound that fuels their alcohol use. Hello everybody, my name is Davy. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol free as fuck, and I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people do the same, like right now, ladies and gentlemen. In over 15 years of being alcohol-free as fuck and helping strivers to be the same, I have never come across anybody who I've worked with, and there have been hundreds, that hasn't carried some sort of emotional wound from a relationship into their relationship with alcohol. It is rocking horse shit rare that anybody comes to work with me and it's like, nah, it's nothing to do with relationships, right? For everybody, the connection is crystal clear. They drink alcohol because they can't relate. Usually it starts by not being able to relate to themselves, but that is a whole new different podcast. What we're going to be talking about today is not being able to handle the emotional load of relationships with other people, right? Or I work with people who are in relationships that keep reopening old wounds that they have never learned to heal. So whether it is verbal, physical, sexual, spiritual, or energetic, your ability to relate to other people is often modeled on people who literally have no clue how to relate themselves. So obviously I'm talking about our parents, right? Usually we pick up how to be a man or how to be a woman or how to be treated by a man or how to be treated by a woman by our parents who never really had a playbook on how to do it right. And if you think today in the year 2025 of all the resources that are available out there in the world, even today, just right now, you're listening to a podcast on relationships. Our parents didn't have any of that shit, right? They literally, baby came out and they didn't have a Scooby what to do. And they just asked their parents who probably just fought in a war. You get the point, right? So we didn't really have this training or practicing, if you like, and that patterning that we kind of like got off our parents, it seeps into how we love, right? And also how we escape. So if you want to live a self-led life, if you want your alcohol-free journey to feel like freedom, not punishment, then you've got to address the way you relate, because the way you relate to one person is the way you relate to everyone. Now, we're going to take a little break so I can lubricate my larynx. But while I'm doing this, have a little break and think about this. If your relationship feels like a battlefield, if you're white knuckling your way through every dinner, if you find yourself reaching for a drink just to survive the tension, that is not love. That is likely legacy. Just sit on that until we come back, okay? Welcome back to the 1000 Days Sober podcast, and we're diving into how our relationship patterns shape our alcohol use and how we can break free. And I want to introduce you to 3 models of relationships, okay? Think of them as levels of consciousness in the connection game of life. And these are inspired by David Data and his book Intimate Communion, and the Klemps, Nate and Kaylee Klemp in the 80-80 Marriage. Both books are really great. I advise you can buy them both. If you want to skip a little bit and reading isn't your thing, I have interviewed Nathan Cayley Clemp on the 1000 Days Sober podcast about their book, The 80/80 Marriage. So just go to our YouTube channel, check that out, and listen to them, okay? So first, in the hodgepodge of Data and Clemp theory is the 80/20 relationship. This is what I call the legacy burden mode, okay? So this is what I would say is the outdated model, or it certainly is getting outdated. This is where one partner, usually the woman, does 80% of the heavy lifting in a relationship. Think about childcare, think about emotional labor, think about household management. So the man goes out, earns the money, and he thinks that's enough. That's my part done. Okay. This is what I experienced growing up in my parents. So my mom stayed at home, she looked after 4 kids, and my dad went to work. And it felt like, that's a decent trade-off, right? What most men have no idea about, okay, is not just the planning and the execution and the scheduling of organizing 4 kids' lives. It's not about getting them out of bed and getting them to school. How do you deal with the emotional changes and the upheaval and the adolescence and the puberty and the broken relationships and the unknown and the emotions and everything that's going on with them? How do you create 4 beautiful children who live self-led life? That takes a lot of effort. That's a lot of men haven't got a fucking clue about, right? That is what we're talking about. Mums usually do all that. Dads usually go to the pub, right? That legacy, that got passed down to me as a young man seeing that happen, right? So when I got into my first marriage, there were parts of me that thought that my job was to earn the money and my partner's job was to do everything else. There was a part of me that felt that I was superior, that the man in the relationship had all the power, right? Had all the control. And all I had to do was shout loud enough in order to get that control. Again, legacy burdens. Internal family systems, IFS, the centrifugal system of the Strive method that comes from Dr. Richard Schwartz. They call these things legacy burdens, right? Racism, sexism. Is it relationshipism? I just made that up, okay? It is a belief or a behavior passed down unconsciously through generations. And it keeps us stuck in imbalance, disconnection. It keeps us out of integrity. And when you're out of integrity in your relationship, alcohol becomes a very, very, very tempting patch, okay? Number 2, the 50/50 relationship, or what I like to call resentment mode, okay? So this is what you see next. This is like men trying to be good guys, right? Men sharing the load, splitting the chores. If you've got kids, I'll take her to bed tonight, you take her to bed tomorrow, right? We'll do some of the cooking, but you do some. We'll clean, but you clean. I'll pay some bills and you can go to work and pay some bills. But here's a trap in the 50/50 model. It sounds like really cool. It sounds like the best way to go forward. But you really, in my experience, you start to keep score, right? And scorekeeping, it kills connection. And Data talks about this a lot in Intimate Communion, is your sexual polarity dies, it dries up. Another person who talks about this balance of power and dividing the chores and all that kind of stuff, and how it ends up drying out your sexual charge, right? Your lubrication of your relationship, if you want to get raw, right? Is Esther Perel. She talks about this a lot as well. So basically, the intimacy in your relationship dies out because everything becomes transactional, right? Everything is fair, but everything is flat. And on the outside in, everything looks really balanced, but it is built on parts trying to avoid conflict, trying to avoid being like their parents. Nobody wants to be the bad guy, right? And this was me for many years. I looked at my parents, I got the legacy burdens of the 80/20, and then I'm like, well, no, I need to be better than this. And all I knew was in my mind, well, if I just share everything, we'll be okay. But ultimately, it left me and it left my partners empty. So what's the answer? Well, number 3, 80/80 relationship. Okay, what the Clemps call the 80/80 model, and what David Data calls intimate communion, and what I call living a self-led life. Because in the 80/80 model of living a self-led life, you're giving 80% into this relationship, right? Not because you have to, but because you fucking choose to. Massive difference. We talked about this with alcohol many times on this podcast. You don't stop drinking because you have to, because that's past energy, willpower. You stop drinking alcohol because you choose to, from self, freedom, right? It's not about what do I get in return if I commit to this 80-80. It's how do I become the highest version of myself in this relationship? And imagine if you took that mentality into your relationship, what your kids would be like when they relate as they grow up. Okay. In the 80-80, you do the emotional lifting because you're committed to growth. You lead repair conversations. You stay in integrity. And when you get out of integrity, which is always natural in relationships, you know how to get back in and you lead there as well. You don't withhold love to punish, and you become a world-class communicator, not to be right, but to stay connected. And here's the thing. You're probably thinking this. If only this only works if both of you are committed to doing your own work. Imagine a tennis court. You're on this side, they're on our side. It's your job to make sure that your side of the tennis court is pristine, that you are showing up in 80-80 energy, right? But if your partner on the other side of that tennis court, there's balls everywhere, there's a mess everywhere, if they're still stuck in legacy burdens and you've communicated it to them, name it. Talk to them about it. Invite them in. Show them your side, how you're doing things. And if they refuse, you walk. Being self-led in relationships doesn't mean being boundaryless, okay? But the key of this whole thing is it starts with you. This is the inside out life, not the outside in life, okay? Okay, today's daily vow. Today, I will not drink because I refuse to outsource my wholeness to someone else. I commit to becoming the partner I wish I had, whether I'm in a relationship or not, because I'm going to lead from self, from integrity, from the 80-80. Your relationship with alcohol is often a reflection of your relationship with relationships itself. Clean one up and the other one follows. As you are going about your day to day, ask yourself these questions. What legacy burdens did you inherit about relationships? Are you in an 80-20, a 50-50, or an 80-80 model right now? And where are you waiting for your partner to change before you lead? And what would choosing to lead from self look like this week? If this episode cracked open something in you, please rate it, review it, and share it with someone who's doing the work to relate better. Please subscribe so don't miss tomorrow's truth. And if you're ready to transform your relationship with alcohol and people and shift up the gears from 80-20 to 50-50 to 80-80, join us in the Strive Method. We do a whole bunch of work during our time in the Strive Method on improving our relational literacy and capacity to relate internally and externally. It is massive, and it isn't therapy, it is initiation, okay? So get over to Strive, www.thestrivemethod.com. Sign up to join the Stuck Phase, the first month of our incredible workshop, right? It's amazing. You'll love it, okay? Until tomorrow, much love and strive on. And today, if you get into a relationship quirk and you feel like drinking alcohol, just reassure that part that you've got it and look at the other person with love and compassion and try to get to the bottom of the issue. Move on by, disappear for a couple of hours to the movies or something. You've got this. Find a plan, have a trigger toolkit and get through it. You've got this. Much love, everybody, and strive on.